unexplainable screams in forbidden forests.
And the loudest roar you've ever heard coming from deep space.
You definitely don't want to hear any of these sounds on your next camping trip.
Or airplane ride.
In 2006, a fancy NASA space balloon, the Absolute Radiometer for Cosmology, Astrophysics, and Diffuse Emission, ARCADE for short, was launched into space to listen for faint radio signals and to look for heat traces coming from incredibly distant and incredibly ancient stars. NASA found no such thing. What they did find, however, was something no one could have ever imagined. A sound described by researchers as a boom. The noise was 6 times louder than anything scientists had originally hoped to find, the loudest known sound in the universe. Of course, when I say sound, I mean that relatively, because as a general rule of thumb, there is no noise in the vacuum of space. In this case, the sound produced was actually a series of disturbances in mechanical waves, likely coming from far beyond our own galaxy. These disturbances were then translated into sound using radio waves to create audible vibrations. It's all very scientific. Of course, the first thing scientists did upon hearing what is now known as the space roar is determine what it was not. And it was not the internal vibrations of an ancient star, nor was it turbulent vibrations produced by our own galaxy's space dust or gas. It was something else entirely. Something louder than all of the stars in all of the galaxies combined. We just don't know what. Furthermore, because the roar is so incredibly loud, it has prohibited researchers from detecting signals from the earliest stars, which was the whole point of launching ARCADE in the first place. It's all very confusing, but hopefully one day it will start to make sense and we will figure out exactly where the roar is coming from. Perhaps a space bear.
What are 3 words you never want to hear while alone deep into the forest in the middle of the night? Creepy Outdoors is a YouTuber who posts videos of him, for the most part, walking through various forests at night. Makes for some pretty good atmospheric content, but on this particular trek he got more than just creepy shadows being cast off of trees. At one point in his video, titled "The Scariest Sound I've Ever Heard in the Forest," he briefly flicks his flashlight off, then from off in the distance somewhere he hears someone call out to him.
Oh, hi.
I don't even have hair on my back, and it would be standing up in this situation. What I love about this video is how clear the voice sounds. The person is obviously saying, "I see you," which 90% of the time is spoken by someone wishing to do you harm. At the same time though, the voice sounds so far away and almost otherworldly because of all the reverb. It just gives you the creeps. And his reaction to hearing this voice feels very genuine too. He just takes a super brief moment to process what he's just heard, and then there's just this breath that comes like, oh, and then the, hi? Anyway, then he just quickly gets the hell out of that forest. Understandably so.
In 2016, in the deepest part of the ocean, the Challenger Deep, located inside of the Mariana Trench, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA for short, heard something. Something they didn't quite understand. Low moans, grumbles, and screeches coming from the deepest known spot on Earth. The sounds were recorded by a titanium encased microphone lowered slowly to the bottom of the ocean in order to keep it from being completely crushed by the pressure of the water surrounding it. The microphone recorded the sounds for 23 days straight. The sounds of the aquatic wilderness were then attributed to whales, earthquakes, and even passing boats, but NOAA themselves admitted that they had no way of actually knowing the true source of what they had heard without further investigative research. Furthermore, the organization is now curious to know what effects rising noise pollution in the deep could possibly have on deep sea aquatic life, as it is estimated that the ocean is now 10 times noisier than it once was 50 years ago due to an increase in shipping, submarines, and underwater construction projects. But maybe what we heard were actually deep sea aliens crying out for the whole world to shut up. Who knows?
The mysterious Singing Lake. Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming has some spectacular sights full of beautiful forests, hot springs, geysers. There's bison, elk, and bears. It's also home to Yellowstone Lake. And aside from the lake's beauty, it's also famous for a haunting, ethereal whistling sound. The sound is often heard emanating from the lake from about sunrise to 10 a.m. There's never been a definitive explanation for what this sound is, and this is just the most well-known recording. People would describe hearing different versions of the sound. Some describe hearing what sounds like bells. Some will say they hear what sounds like ghostly humming. And speaking of ghosts, some say Yellowstone Lake is haunted. A number of people have drowned in the lake over the years, but many of the bodies have never been found. It's often said that the Yellowstone Lake never gives up the dead. Part of what makes the lake so dangerous is its low temperature, year-round, with an average of about 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius.
In April of 2020, Chase Floyd, a science teacher from Scranton, Pennsylvania, began hearing something strange while exploring the woods in his hometown. Low howling and whooping noises that he believed were coming from a Sasquatch. The more he heard, the more uneasy Chase became, and eventually he began describing feelings of lightheadedness and nausea. When Chase returned home from the woods, he immediately got to researching animal sounds, but he couldn't find anything that matched what he had heard out in the wilderness, so he posted the video online. And it wasn't long before a man named Ken Gerhard chimed in to say he's heard the same thing and he believes the sounds are originating from a Bigfoot. Not only that, but that the symptoms experienced by Chase in response to the Bigfoot's call were actually something called omawing, a phenomenon rooted in Native American folklore, omawing being an overwhelming energy experienced when close to a Sasquatch that can at times manifest as temporary paralysis. This is because the creature uses something called infrasound, incredibly low-pitched vibrational frequencies to disrupt, confuse, and disorient both predator and prey. Infrasound is also used by tigers. Chase Floyd's video is then reviewed by a soundscape ecologist named Ben Gottsman, who claims that no, this is not a sound from any known animal, but this also isn't the first time he's heard a sound like that before. In fact, Gottsman said he heard almost the exact same sound in a video taken by Ron Moorhead just a few years back, a video that came to be known as the Sierra Sound.
Speaking of Bigfoot, the Sierra sounds are said to be the most convincing piece of possible Bigfoot audio ever recorded. So in the early 70s, a couple of guys named Ron Moorhead and Al Berry decided to head into the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. The guys camped out in a remote area of the woods where they started to hear some really strange noises at night. We're talking very loud and powerful, animalistic yet almost human-like sounds. They recorded these noises which came to be known as the Sierra Sounds. So you have all sorts of things in these recordings. You got hits like knocks, whoops, growls, screams. Some of the recordings almost sound like the creature is speaking some sort of language. The sounds have been analyzed by multiple experts over the years, and some say it could be a hoax, but there are also quite a few who believe the sounds are too complex to be faked, and that whatever was making these noises doesn't sound like any known animal. All I know is that if I heard this while out in the middle of the woods at night, I'd probably implode.
This next sound was uploaded to YouTube on December 16th of 2017, and it is terrifying. The video was filmed in Whitsett, formerly known as Morristown, in Manitoba, British Columbia, Canada. The man filming is standing on his front porch, and he's clearly concerned about where the heck this sound is coming from and what the heck is making it. And to be fair, I am too. I've literally never heard a sound like that before in my life, animal or otherwise. Personally, I would have called the police at this point, but you do you, I guess. Many online users responded to the video saying that the sound was coming from either a Bigfoot or perhaps even a skinwalker, mimicking the sounds of someone in trouble so that they could lure people into the woods and steal their soul. And a handful of users in both Ontario and Missouri also claim to have heard the same or similar noises in the woods near their hometowns. Like I said, I have no idea what it is, but stay safe out there.
In February of 2016, all throughout the town of Forest Grove, Oregon, people heard this. So calls were coming into the local news and police by the hundreds. To this day though, no one knows what the hell this awful sound was. And it does sound awful. It's like nails on a chalkboard being broadcast over a loudspeaker. It's incredibly grating. And if it was only heard by folks in, say, one neighborhood or street, it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But this was being heard all over town. The reports were so widespread that this story was covered on multiple news stations at the time. What do you all think of this one, though? Was this some sort of otherworldly sound, or did someone just find an elaborate, advanced way to piss off their entire town?
Have you ever heard of a Skyquake? No? Well, they are pretty scary and they sound like this. And like this. And also like this. And we have no idea what they are. Of course, there are theories that suggest that these skyquakes are nothing more than the sonic boom of an airplane, but they have been reported throughout the world for far longer than airplanes have been around, so that clearly isn't the answer. Other theories are that skyquakes are the sound of a meteorite exploding or distant thunder, but unfortunately for those wanting an easy answer, scientists have deemed both of those theories unrealistic. One possible explanation, however, that is not so easily dismissed by the scientific community is that skyquake noises might be happening as a result of gas escaping through underwater vents in the earth, but at the end of the day this theory has yet to be proven. Now, while I was doing some research, I stumbled upon quite a daunting coincidence. Take a listen to this. Sounds like a skyquake, right? Well, it's not. What you just heard was actually the sound of a black hole, courtesy of the Chanda X-ray Observatory. The similarities are uncanny, and that, my friends, is truly terrifying.
This has to be one of the most unsettling recordings of something howling from the woods that I've ever heard. That howl was heard over and over again by Gino Mikas, his wife and grandson, who were out hunting for grouse in northwestern Ontario. Mikas said he thought the howl was coming from a moose at first, but the more the howling continued, the clearer it became that this was not a sound he recognized. And that's saying a lot because he's an experienced hunter who's heard just about everything out in the wilderness. He knows what black bears and wolves sound like. When the howling started to sound like it was moving closer, they quickly retreated back to their car. Rightfully so. What's the creepiest thing you've heard out in the wilderness? Let us know down in the comments.
Stay safe. Cheers.